Hello, and welcome to our newest build guide for a spellcaster character. Thanks to the new changes to the Arcane Surge, the Hierophant Ascendancy looks very promising for a classical caster build. Additional cast speed, permanent power and endurance charges, and enormous mana reservation efficiency bonuses are all very valuable and versatile in their usage. The Arcane Blessing Notable now grants you 20% more spell damage, which is enough to spend your Ascendancy points for. It also grants you the Arcane Surge buff even if you don't spend mana to cast your spells anymore, which allows you to pick up the Eldritch Battery Keystone and reserve 100% of your mana with auras. The Firestorm calls down a meteor followed by fiery storms in the targeted location. You can have only up to 3 Firestorms active, but it is not a big deal since most damage comes from the initial meteor anyway. Ignite is rather weak here, so it is best to reach out for alternative ailment effects. It is a very generic spellcaster build with lots of bonuses to elemental spell damage, critical strikes, and cast speed. If you are not a fan of the Firestorm, you can make a few adjustments to the passive tree or gear choices and start using completely different elemental spell with similar success. The Firestorm is a rather slow and hard-hitting ability. Thanks to this property, it is excellent at inflicting powerful ailments that can be used to boost your damage and survivability even further, but you will need specific items to be able to do that with just the fire damage. The close proximity to block and recovery notables allows this build to become quite tanky at a reasonably low cost. You will have lots of armor and evasion rating, easy access to leech, and the damage delay from petrified blood. You also redirect 10% of incoming damage to your mana, which is now covered by energy shield. It has decent clear speed, but slightly delayed damage can be a bit annoying if monsters move too fast. The damage against bosses is very good, especially versus big and stationary enemies. It is a very cheap build to get started and has many ways to improve its effectiveness through gear investments. There are a lot of good unique items that can be used here, although none of them is necessary for the build mechanics. The most impactful one is the Leadership Price, which allows you to inflict alternative ailments with your fire damage. Leadership's price can raise or lower your maximum resistances depending on its randomized rolls, and grant you conflux if you balance your 2 highest attributes properly. Thanks to that conflux, you can inflict all alternative ailments with just the fire damage of your Firestorm. It is a decent budget option to use at the start. It grants tons of flat fire damage for your spells through the Battlemage Notable, and rewards you with fire penetration if you blocked a hit recently. It also grants a decent bonus to your block chance so you can meet those criteria more often. The Annihilating Light is an insanely powerful staff that grants you a 100% chance to deal triple damage but requires heavy investments into elemental resistances. It is a common drop, but offsetting the downside will require a bit of investment in your rare gear. Skin of the Lords grants a total of 4 gem levels if you also use the Empower support, and improves your global defenses such as armor or evasion rating. For a randomized keystone, try to look for the Iron Wool, but with recent changes to Breach it is totally optional. Thanks to your Ascendancy you will have permanent 4 brutal charges, and with a single use of Enduring Cry you can gather up to 6 of them during tougher fights. They grant a 3% chance to deal triple damage for each brutal charge you have. In exchange, you lose the defensive value of endurance charges. Mark of the Shaper will grant you a ton of spell damage if your other ring is an Elder item, and you can also boost that bonus with the use of catalysts even further. A double influenced item would also grant you stun immunity, but it can be rather hard to obtain. Brutal Restraint grants you tons of dexterity which is required in high amounts for your gem requirements. On top of that, it will grant various bonuses to your passive tree notables. You can also opt for the Trader Keystone, which will improve your Flask sustain at the cost of losing out 1 Flask slot. You will use a lot of auras, so you can pick up many modifiers on this jewel. The best one would be related to Zealotry, but defensive ones from Grace or Determination are also useful. To improve your damage you will need items with modifiers to your main gem levels, critical strike chance and multiplier, cast speed, and elemental damage. The price of Leadership requires a very specific amount of attributes, so keep that in mind when acquiring new piece of gear. Defensively, you will want to get as much maximum life as possible and cap your resistances. Rare Helmet can grant you tons of mana reservation efficiency. proper enchant, Eldritch Implicits, and Essence modifier will allow you to use more auras than usual. On top of that, try to look for bonuses to maximum life, resistances, and attributes. A good rare weapon can grant you up to 5 levels for your main gem level, increase the damage and cast speed for your spells, and improve your critical strike chance and multiplier. Fractured modifiers and essences will greatly aid you in crafting a good one. At first you will probably need to use a regular rare armor with maximum life, resistances, and possibly some Eldritch Implicits to boost all your aura effects. Later you can replace it with the sacrificial garb to get easy +1 level to Vol skill gems and add influence-specific modifiers like an additional curse or base critical strike chance. On your rare boots you should focus mostly on movement speed, maximum life, and resistances. You can also look for certain elemental avoidances, or a chance to gain onslaught on kill. Thanks to the Eldritch Implicits you can get a bit of action speed which will improve your cast speed or get even more avoidances. Your rare gloves are focused mostly on defensives, but there are a few modifiers that can improve your damage. You can look for specific Alva's modifiers against enemies affected by specific ailments, but getting high maximum life, resistance, or attribute modifiers is more important. A regular rare belt is also a good option to use. You should look for maximum life, resistances, attributes, and possibly some life regeneration. The Stygian Vice is the best base as it allows you to use additional Abyss Jewel. Rare Abyss Jewels can be pretty useful to gain some damage, critical strike multiplier, or lacking resistances and attributes. You can also aim for one with immunity to corrupted blood in their implicit. On a rare ring you should look for maximum life, resistances, and lacking attributes. You can also get some damage, critical strike multiplier, or minimum frenzy charges, but remember to use an Elder base to benefit from the Mark of the Shaper. At first you should simply use a rare amulet with bonuses to maximum life, gem levels, and critical strike multiplier or cast speed. Additional resistances or attributes are also useful. You will lose a lot of critical strike chance by not having the brittle effect, so you might need to change your gem setup a little bit. Rare jewels are a great source of critical strike multiplier if you can afford good ones. They also come with bonuses to maximum life, resistances, or attributes if needed. Getting corrupted blood immunity or mana reservation efficiency is also possible here, but you will probably need to forfeit some life or damage modifiers. The Bottled Faith is a great unique flask to improve your damage against bosses, as it increases your critical strike chance and damage against enemies standing in the consecrated ground it creates. As for your remaining magic flasks, we recommend using a life flask with bleeding removal, diamond flask with additional cast speed bonus, quicksilver flask with evasion rating bonus, and a granite flask with armor rating bonus. The Firestorm is a spell that causes the meteor to fall down from the sky, and create a rain of fire in the location for a short duration. The Vol version of this skill can be used to further boost single target potential, as it summons more meteors. The Intensify is a multi-purpose support gem that initially grants you tons of extra area of effect, but if you keep casting without moving too much the bonus will change into a pure damage multiplier. Thanks to the Hierophant reservation efficiency bonuses you will be able to use tons of useful auras. The Determination is a defensive aura that grants you a lot of flat armor rating and improves all the armor from your gear. Grace is similar to the previous aura but grants you evasion rating instead. You probably won't have that much evasion on your gear, but the aura itself is enough to grant you a decent chance to evade attacks. Petrified Blood causes half of the incoming damage to be dealt as a damage over time effect, and allows you to reserve half of your life without any downside and benefit from the Pain Attunement Keystone. Skitterbots are used to inflict shock and chill effects on nearby enemies even if you don't have any cold or lightning damage in your build or use alternative ailments. The Vitality grants you a lot of life regeneration. Adjust its level to your remaining available mana, as it reserves flat amount of mana instead of the usual percentage. The aura setup may change a bit, depending on the amount of mana reservation efficiency on your gear. Ideally, you want all your auras to be linked with the Enlightened support to reduce their reservation even more. Herald of Ash grants lots of fire damage for your spells. It also burns nearby enemies for a portion of overkill damage, which improves the clear speed quite significantly. Thanks to the Arrogant support, this setup will reserve your life instead of mana. Half of your health is already effectively reserved by the petrified blood, so you don't lose any survivability anyway. Zealotry grants you a generic spell damage bonus and some critical strike chance. You will also have a chance to create consecrated ground under enemies you hit, which further improves your critical strike chance. The Divine Blessing support changes this permanent aura into a temporary buff which doesn't reserve mana but requires a large upfront cost every time you cast it. Wave of Conviction applies elemental exposure matching the highest damage type it deals to a target. Exposure lowers elemental resistances of affected foes. Flammability lowers the fire resistance of the affected enemy. If you use other elemental type spell, use Frostbite or Conductivity instead. Elemental Weakness lowers all types of elemental resistance of cursed enemy. Use it if you have a source of additional curse limit such as Whispers of Doom Anoint or Corruption implicit on your amulet. Those 3 utility spells should be linked with the Arcanist brand so you can apply them all with just one button press. That way you won't get the curse effectiveness penalty. Flame Dash is your main travel spell. It teleports you in a short distance and can store up to 3 charges. Using any movement skill will reset the intensity stacks of your Firestorm. Molten Shell grants you a bit of armor and absorbs incoming damage. You can use the Vol version for an even better shield. Enduring Cry grants you a lot of life regeneration and generates endurance charges. It is a great way to get a burst of healing, but it is used mostly to generate brutal charges if you use the Arn's Anguish belt. At first you can help the Alira to get elemental resistances, crit multiplier, and mana regeneration to ease early gear progression, but you will ultimately want to change it later for the 2 passive skill points granted by Aramir. For your major Pantheon power we recommend taking the Soul of Brine King, which will save you from stun locks and freezes. If you have stun immunity or elemental avoidances on your gear, you can pick the Soul of Era Kali to deal with damage over time effects easier. Your minor Pantheon power also helps with damage over time effects. You can use the Soul of Ralakesh to make most bleeding effects trivial, or Soul of Shikari to help with chaos damage which can often catch you off guard. It is a very pleasant build to level up. You will have to get to Act 3 in order to get the Firestorm gem, but you can use any spell to level up on your way to maps. We recommend using the Freezing Pulse which is available right from level 2. It has very good single target damage and decent clear thanks to the built-in Pierce. During leveling we recommend going the non-crit route and taking the Elemental Overload Keystone instead. Usually, with Eldritch Battery Keystone you wouldn't even need the leech, but the Hierophant Ascendancy redirects 10% of incoming damage to the energy shield, which can interrupt the ongoing recharge. The 1 point spent in the energy shield leech cluster is more than enough to help with that. The Glancing Blows Keystone doubles your block chance but makes it less effective. It makes capping your block chance much easier, making it an overall more reliable defensive layer. Pain Attunement grants you 30% more spell damage if you have less than 50% maximum life. Thanks to the Petrified Blood you will have that status at all times. Thanks to the Hierophant Ascendancy you will gain the Arcane Surge buff when you hit an enemy with a spell, even if you don't spend mana. It also drastically increases the damage bonuses of that buff. The Sanctuary of Thoughts grants you an enormous amounts of mana reservation efficiency, as well as some energy shield needed for your Eldritch Battery setup. That's it for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it and found some inspiration for your future builds. Stay safe, and see you in the next video.